Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's seminar, part 2. I'm just getting my screens set up, and then we will go ahead and get started. Amy, could you do me a favor? While I'm doing that, could you run through the housekeeping stuff?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right. So welcome, everybody. Thanks again for joining us tonight for the second part of our two-part series here. The couple of housekeeping things before we get started include finding your chat box. This is what we're going to use to communicate back and forth with questions that you may have during the presentation, and we'll answer them as we go along. You can find that by taking your mouse and hovering over the bottom of your screen, and you should have a bar that pops up, and there's a little chat bubble. So go ahead and click that and you can practice typing things in. So I want you to go ahead and practice that now. Please go ahead, click the chat bubble and just type in your name and where you're from, please. And I will go first. I'm Amy Barkley and I'm from Southwest New York. And like last time, we had the error with the chat box. So I just made it so that everybody can chat in. So could you please try that again, please? If you tried and you didn't have your message go through. Yes. Awesome. Thank you. And as you're doing that, just a couple more items. So this is set up as a webinar, which means that we can't hear you or see you, but you can see and hear us. And the reason that we do that is because that allows us to save some bandwidth and help with the video along during the presentation and also audio quality. So I will actually turn my screen blank when Caitlin gets started to help save bandwidth as well. And we'll go from there. So any questions or comments that you have, like we said before, please pop them in the chat box. We will have polls throughout the presentation. So when those come up, you could just go ahead and click on the screen and then we'll show the answers at the end. So that's all I've got here.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. I was having some screen issues back here. So we always try to make sure there's at least 2 of us on these webinars so that we can pop back and forth, and Amy's a pro at covering everything. So thank you.
No problem.
I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. As you guys all have seen, we are recording this. At the end, though, we'll turn the recording off. So if you have any questions that you want to ask that aren't something you want on the recording, just save those until the end. So a few reminder slides. Tonight's seminar is a partnership between our program, the Southwest New York Dairy, Livestock, and Field Crops program, as well as Cornell Small Farms Veteran Education Initiative, FarmOpsP. We're really appreciative of their support. They're who make this whole thing possible. So there's the website link again that you can visit to learn more information. Our program's partnership between Cornell University and the 5 CC associations of Erie, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Steuben counties. We have 4 specialists that cover farm business management, livestock and beginning farms, field crops, and dairy management. Tonight, you're going to hear from myself and Amy Barkley. I'm our farm business management specialist and team leader, and there's my contact information plus what you've been receiving in your emails. Amy is our team's amazing livestock and beginning farm specialist. So she's really helpful for anything related to livestock production, as well as for those of you who are just getting started and want some beginning farmer support. Our obligatory disclaimer and our cell phone numbers. So if you run into any tech issues along the way, if you get logged off on accident and can't get back in, feel free to call or text either one of these numbers and we will work on trying to get you connected. Likewise, if either myself or Amy runs into tech issues and gets booted off, the other one of us will work on getting everything back to the beginning. Okay. Continuing on, tonight is the second part of our Setting Your Farm Financial Resolution series. We will plan to wrap up around 7:30. And if you have any questions or concerns after the series, please don't hesitate to reach out. For Tuesday, we talked a little bit about theory and a little bit about kind of planning for farm financials. Tonight, we're going to talk even less about theory and really get into a lot of the nitty gritty. So we're going to review some of our Tuesday topics and your homework, but then we're going to get into kind of the nuts and bolts of farm financial management, setting your resolutions, kind of using the beginning of the year as an opportunity to reset for moving forward. At the end of this, there will be a evaluation that pops up automatically, and in your follow-up email will include an evaluation. Please fill that out. Let us know if there's ways we can improve this, things that you really liked, things that you learned, and ideas for future seminar topics or other things that you want to learn about. Amy and I really do go through each one of them and read them. So we really do appreciate your feedback, and this partnership between us and FarmOps wouldn't be possible without communication back from all of you to help make sure we're meeting all of your educational needs. So to get started, you guys know how much I like polls. So our first poll, let me go ahead and launch this. We want to know if you were able to complete the homework tasks from Tuesday. So the index card and the post-it notes. On the index card, we asked you to write down what you learned, what you've already done, and if you have any questions still on your post-it note, and if you completed your record keeping intentions list. So that was the who, what, where, when, why, how of record keeping. So we will leave this up here for a second, and then I will launch the results. Cool. So we have full participation. Thank you, everybody. Looks like everybody was able to complete their homework as well as complete their record keeping intentions list. So at this point, what I would ask is that you take that record keeping intentions list, the who, what, where, when, why, and how sheet, and put it someplace where you're going to see it to kind of help hold yourself accountable, right? So I think I shared with you, ours is on our fridge for our farm. Maybe it's taped onto the desk where you do your farm finances. Wherever is a central place for you that you're going to be seeing that often, that would be ideal. Okay, we're going to quickly follow that up with another poll. So our second poll for the night, we want to know, just give me 1 second here. Amy, if you click on polls, are you able to see the rest of the poll questions?
Sorry, one more time, Caitlin.
Yep. If you click on polls on your control bar, are you able to see all of the poll questions?
I have a ... So let me check that out.
Yeah. Oh, I think I found it.
Okay.
We're good.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, I don't see it, so.
Yes, I know. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Apparently we're just going to run into all of the tech glitches. So for our second poll, we wanted to know if there was anything new that you learned or something that you were reminded of from Tuesday. And this is, you can select as many as you want to. So on Tuesday, we talked about deciding whether or not your farm was a hobby or a farm business, your business structure for your farm, defining your why bother, options for record keeping systems, cost of poor record keeping, what you can do with good records. We had a reminder activity that sometimes farm financials are dumb, right? And then we defined the who, what, where, when, why, and how of record keeping. So if any of that was new or a reminder or a motivation to help kind of start your reset for 2023, go ahead and select that on the poll. And I'll leave this up for another few seconds or so. All right, so I'm going to end this poll and share it back. Looks like we've got a pretty good mix. So what I find interesting is that, you know, the least new was the cost of poor record keeping, right? So we all know that poor record keeping costs our business. It's hard on our business. So I find this a good reflection of that. Perfect. All right. So now we get into the nitty gritty. So the reason that we did this seminar in particular at the beginning of this year is that the new year kind of gives us a chance to reset our farm financial intentions and our goals, right? We can do that at any time of the year, but I think that at the beginning of the year, we're all on the new year, new me trend, right? So sometimes it's easier to start new things at that point. In your packets that you received or will be receiving shortly, there's this resetting for 2023 checklist. That's what we're going to be focusing on going through tonight. There's also something called a SMART goals worksheet that we're going to introduce. And then there's the big packet, which is called Starting an Ag Business from New York FarmNet. But I will say that it's not just for starting, right? So if you are in the early stages of your farm business, this is still a really helpful tool. So we'll be referencing some things that are in that as well. For that guide in particular, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. So that's one of those pieces of information that I would hope you spend time looking through after tonight's seminar. Okay, so kind of looking at that resetting for 2023 checklist, we're going to go down the line. Luckily, most of these we did on Tuesday to get started with here. So when we think about clarifying our personal goals and how the farm helps meet them, as well as our farm goals, that's just remembering your farm's why bother. And as a reminder, we want to honor and save space for your this is dumb, right? So sometimes record keeping is really hard. Sometimes farm finances are not fun. And just recognizing that as we continue and kind of reset our financial goals for the year. We talked about deciding your farm's purpose, whether you're a hobby or a business. So that's checked off already. We talked about getting a DBA or doing business as. If you do decide to proceed as a sole proprietorship, a DBA is something that you file with your county clerk's office as a reminder. And if you choose a different business structure, then you'll follow the necessary reporting and permitting requirements for those. We talked about establishing a separate business checking account for your farm, and you can use your DBA to do this. And this is a checking account that you will use only for the farm. And then you'll take that checking account, you'll deposit some startup funds in that and start paying for all of your farm expenses out of that new account. You can still move money in and out of it for personal use, right? It's just having all of your transactions run through that single account will help make it easier to when it comes to record keeping time. And it'll also help with your tax preparation, and it provides an extra layer of separation between yourself and the farm business. On Tuesday, we talked about creating a safe space for all of your receipts of your farm sales and purchases. And I would, encourage everybody as you were going through that who, what, where, when, why, how sheet, and keep going through your farm over the next couple of weeks. Just identify what that safe place is. And that can vary, right? For those of you who don't know, I suffer from migraines and I've been fighting one all day. So my brain's a little bit spacey. So I'm really relying on my notes tonight. So where you keep your receipts on your farm can vary. And rather than setting really high expectations for yourself of having this perfect, organized, color-coded, laminated record keeping system place, right? We really want to just recognize that we're all individuals. We all organize things differently in our brains. And so that could look like a folder. I know Nina was sharing, she has a folder on their desk, and that's where the receipts go, and that's where the sales go. And that's perfect, right? That fits their needs. It's a designated space. If you are receipts end up in jean pockets and in glove compartments and in the center consoles, right? Maybe you move to having some type of a corral in each of your vehicles. And when you sit down to do your records, you go through and you get all of the receipts out of those records. And another safe place is an outside accountant, right? So if you go through this and you're like, you know what, record keeping, it's not for me. Dropping all of those records off to an accountant's office is a safe space for those records. So now we want to know, out of those beginning tasks that were on our 2023 reset list, which have you already completed for your farm this year, or which of those were something that you already had in place for your farm. So we've got your why bother, filing your taxes as a farm business, separate checking account, or creating designated spaces. So click the ones that you're already doing. Okay. Great. So looks like we've got a pretty good mix. Everybody is doing a really good job with having a designated space for their receipts. So that's wonderful. And most people have at least started or are working on everything else. So thank you all for sharing that. Okay. So now we're going to get into some new topics. The next thing that I would kind of encourage everybody to do as we look to the new year is to call your county's USDA office, or the United States Department of Ag. Your USDA office is a helpful service provider for all things agriculture. They're really friendly people, I promise. So what you should do is give them a call and just confirm your contact information, make sure that they've got you on their mailing list. If you're new to their mailing list, they'll assign you like a farm ID. It's just a way that they internally keep track of your farm. So it's just making sure that you're on their mailing list. If you're on their mailing list, then you'll be notified of any loans or program applications that come up. And if you have any existing loans or program applications, you can use this time to check in on those. And then you can also ask if there's any new programs that you qualify for. So sometimes they might have some new grants. They might have some new loan opportunities, insurance options. And just, I think that the beginning of a year is a good time to give them a call and remember to kind of check in with them. So at this point, everybody in your packets that you received in your small white envelopes, you should have gotten some Post-it notes in there, or if you just have Post-it notes on your own, or take out your resetting sheet. What I want everybody to do is to write down the phone number of their USDA service center. If you don't know your USDA service center, they are by county. I went through the registration list and for tonight's webinar and picked out the phone numbers for the most common counties. If you don't see your county of residence listed here, please type it in the chat and we'll find it. Or you can just Google your county's name plus USDA Service Center, or this app up here, or this, I'm so sorry, what's the word? This hyperlink up here will send you to the right, to their service center locator as well. So go ahead and take a second to see if you can find your county on here, and if not, we'll find it for you. Cattaraugus County. So let's see here. I should know that one off the top of my head since that's my county. Okay, I will go ahead and type in Cattaraugus County into the chat. If there's any other ones that are missing, feel free to let us know and we'll look those up for you quick. And just as a reminder, we're all writing down the county service center number for our farms.
So someone asked us about Shenango. Shenango's actually in the middle column, 5 entries down.
Thank you, Amy. Yep, so Shenango's the 3231 phone number. Okay, so everybody should have their county number. If you aren't already in regular contact with them, definitely would encourage you to use the beginning of this year as a chance to do that. The next thing, very similarly, is to call your county's SWCD office. So SWCD is your soil and water conservation district. Every county in New York State has one. They're really helpful. Their mission is to be kind of a quasi-governmental organization that preserves water quality conservation efforts for farms, for homeowners, for municipalities. They do a lot of things, but one advantage one thing that's advantageous for farms is that they do sometimes offer cost share grant programs for different types of projects that you might be doing on your farm. So it's helpful to give them a call. There's something called an AEM that you will, the first time you call them, the first time you establish a relationship with them, that you'll work on completing for your farm. It's called agricultural environment management. There's a few different stages. The first stage is actually just putting your name and your contact information in their system. The second stage, they have kind of like a binder, a questionnaire that they come out to the farm and just ask you. So it's things like, how close are you to waterways? What do you do to manage your manure? What do you do to manage your compost? And it's just a way for them to identify areas of risk on your farm from a conservation standpoint. And they don't actually do anything with those records. So it's not like you complete the AEM and then they're like, oh, you need to, fix this problem right away. It's just so that you guys can have a conversation about what's going on your farm. And then as they find different grant opportunities for which you might qualify, they can go back to that AEM and say, oh yeah, this farm, they were looking for some manure storage and we have funds available for manure storage. So they're just a really good organization to work with. Their work overlaps a lot with NRCS, or the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which is located within that USDA Service Center. So now, same thing, wherever you wrote down your USDA office, go ahead and take a second to write down your soil and water office. And if we missed it, let us know. And I will look up Cattaraugus right now. So right now we are working on writing down our county soil and water office phone number. Oh, I just saw a question pop up from Marjorie. Can you speak a bit about farm numbers? I think that's in reference to when I was talking about the USDA and them assigning you a farm number. It's just something that they internally do so that then they can track your just track your farm. But I don't mean track as in like track you, just it goes into their directory. So when you get mail from them, there'll be like a little farm number on the top. We used to get questions, 20 years ago. It was like standard how to start a farm, that you called your USDA office and got a farm registration number, right? And it's not actually anything that exciting. It's just how they track who you are when you give them a call. And Marjorie, if that was not what you were asking about, let me know. Kathleen, I can't read the last four for Shenango. Oh, thank you, Amy. This link at the top of this slide as well is the service locator or the directory for all of the soil and water offices in the state. Okay, so now we've got our USDA office, our soil and water office. And the next kind of other people to keep in touch with, I think, is obviously I'm a little bit biased, but your Cornell Cooperative Extension office. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides research-based training, consultations, individualized support, newsletters, and the 4-H Youth Development Program, nutrition education, natural resources education, a little bit everything. So each county has a Cornell Cooperative Extension office. Usually they have some type of a mailing list. Sometimes you have to pay for it, sometimes you don't have to pay for it. but it's always a good idea to just call your county office if you're not already receiving notifications from them, to make sure you're getting updates about upcoming events and trainings. A lot of offices have newsletters where they'll talk about grant opportunities or important topics that are timely. And like I said, each county has a CCE office. This is the link if you wanted to look at the state's entire directory, but now on that same place where you've written down the USD office, the soil and water office, go ahead and write down the phone number for your local CCE office. And I'll look up the Cattaraugus County office, which is great because that's actually the one that I'm in right now. And I have no idea what the phone number is at all. So this is an exciting time for me. I'm going to go find out. But go ahead and write down your local CCE office number. Okay, so like I mentioned, just giving your CCE office a call every once in a while and checking in to make sure you're on their newsletter notification list and that you're in their system is always a good idea. All right, so the next thing that should be on your resetting list at the beginning of the year is to create a mileage log and make sure that's in all of your vehicles, and we'll talk about why. So creating a mileage log is a way for you to write off the expense of using your personal vehicles as a business expense for the farm. So what you'll do is when you file your Schedule F at the end of the year for your farm business, you'll work with your accountant to say how many miles you drove for the farm, and you'll receive the mileage rate for that as like a business, qualified business expense for your farm. So the other thing that you can do is if you don't want to track miles, or if you have vehicles that are designated only for farm use, you can use the expenses of those vehicles. So the fuel, the maintenance, any parts and repairs, and the service costs of those repairs. So you can track those, and that's what you claim for the vehicles. However, for most situations, tracking your miles and claiming the mileage is easier to track, and it always ends up in a larger expense that you can claim as compared to tracking those maintenance input costs. So I typically recommend that farmers keep track of the mileage. In your packets, you guys received a few copies of these. This is actually the mileage log that I use for my farm, and I just put our CCE logo and the FarmOps logo on the bottom of it. So some pro tips when it comes to tracking your mileage for the purposes of claiming those miles on your farm taxes. Take these sheets and put them on a clipboard and tie a pen to that clipboard or duct tape a pen to that clipboard. And log your mileage, or put some mileage logs on that clipboard and write down your travel on that clipboard on this mileage log for anytime that you're driving for the farm. So I actually keep a copy of this in all of our vehicles rather than having like one central mileage log. I've got 3 vehicles that we use for the farm, so there's mileage logs in each of those vehicles. Then what you can do is you can collect your mileage logs whenever you do your record keeping or on a regular basis. For our farm, I do my record keeping once a week, but we're not necessarily doing that much driving, especially this time of year. So I might only do my mileage logs once a month, once a quarter, whatever makes sense for your farm. So on this mileage log, you'll see we're going to record the date, the total miles driven, starting location, ending location, and the purpose of the trip, and any notes. One thing that can be really helpful is to match your mileage log up to receipts or expenditures for the farm. So this is a way that I can track if we missed recording mileage or if we missed recording an expense. So for example, if I'm going through and I'm putting in receipts for my farm and I find a receipt, but there's not a trip associated with that receipt on my mileage log, then I know I probably forgot to write down that mileage on the mileage log. Vice versa, if I wrote down on the mileage log, February 1st, I went to Springville to Lowe's to pick up some building supplies, and I can't find that receipt, it helps remind me that I might be missing a receipt when I go to do my record keeping. So keeping an accurate mileage log is a really great way to also kind of provide another backstop for your record keeping. Okay, so now what I want everybody to do is, and this is mostly just so you guys see it and touch it, right? So that it's there as a resource for you. Find the mileage log that we mailed to you and fill out the top corner. So the top corner, you put your farm name, you put your time frame. So I usually will say, I'll fill out the first part as like February 1st, right? Or January 1st. And I'll leave the second line blank until I go to collect these, and then I'll fill that in. The vehicle, so this might be, Caitlin's car, Scott's truck, extra truck, whatever however you name your vehicles. If your vehicles have adorable names, I love that. And please put those in the chat. And then this sheet blank of blank. At the end of the year, what I do is I collect all of these, and I know I've got 4 sheets total. So I'll just put sheet 1 of 4, sheet 2 of 4, sheet 3 of 4, and that's so I can make sure I've got all of the mileage sheets. So go ahead and pre-fill the top corner on one of your mileage sheets if you would like to use these. Other people have different systems though too. So some folks just have a notebook in a vehicle. Some folks entirely just use their receipts and then go back and kind of fill in their mileage log after they've recorded all of the receipts. And some people use apps. So there's different phone apps that you can use to track your miles too. Yes, F-150 is known as the blueberry. It's blue. I love it. We used to have a truck, and we always just a very small blue truck, so we called it Little Blue. There's something about blue vehicles, right? I love it. Blueberry. All right. So the next thing, which I hope most of you know about, and if you don't know about it, I'm about to save you a bunch of money. So there's something in New York State called the ST-125. And ST-125 is a tax exemption for farms. So any purchases that are made for the farm, for use on the farm, can be purchased tax exempt. So this is what an ST-125 looks like. And in your packets, we mailed everybody a few copies of them. This is a standard form that you can just go online and print out. It's not anything special. You just Google ST-125 and whatever comes up is what you print out. They do update it from time to time, but it hasn't been updated in several years at this point. The ST-125 is a way for you to make purchases for the farm and not have to pay sales tax at the time of purchase. You file this with every vendor that you work with, both in person and online. So for example, your feed store, you file this with them, but then also you can put a copy of this on Amazon. You can put a copy of this on Valley Vet Supply, so that then your online purchases, you're not paying tax on those as well. You do not need an EIN for tax exempt status in New York State. So for most other businesses or nonprofits, they usually use some other type of indicator number, like an EIN, the employer identification number that we talked about on Tuesday. But in New York State, we don't need those. And that's why we have these ST-125s. So the cool part about this is that you're not sharing your social security number, your EIN number with vendors. You're just sharing your contact information in New York State. What you'll do is you'll fill out the left-hand side boxes where it says name of seller, address, and mailing address. Typically what I do is for most purchases, I'm filing these with feed store, with equipment store, supply store. So you'll go ahead and mark blanket certificate. And then you select the box that best fits whatever you're purchasing. So you can go ahead and read through those, but usually it's if you're going to buy feed, you're going to buy lumber. A is tangible personal property, which will be used mostly for the farm. So you fill out the top box, you select the appropriate option or use. And then at the bottom, you just sign it with your name and the date and file that with your vendor. So pro tip, keep copies of this in all of your vehicles along with your mileage log. So I actually have my clipboard with my mileage log, and then on the back of it is a few copies of the ST-125. So if we ever end up someplace where someplace new that we're not already filed with, we've got that handy. Most stores do not keep ST-125s on hand, so you have to usually bring it in to them. Yep. Oh, perfect, Nina. Great minds think alike. So Nina also keeps them in all of her vehicles, which is perfect. She also shared that Johnny's Flex Seeds will take your ST-125. Yes, they will. And they're super nice. You usually just like email them the copy, and this wonderful person responds back right away and is like, oh yeah, we've taken that $60 off your order, and it's a good day. Okay, so now take a minute to complete the upper left, it should say top left-hand corner of one of your ST-125s, and it's mostly just so that we can say that you picked it up and you started to do the work, right? You started to fill this out. And if you don't want to do this right now, just pick it up and look at it, and we can say that you did that. Okay, so now we've got another poll question. We want to know, out of the things that we just talked about, which one of those were you already doing, or might have already had in place, and it's select all. So maybe you've already called USDA, already called SWCD, already worked with your CCE office, keep your mileage log, your tax exemption. Go ahead and select any of those that you have already done or already started that process. Okay. So it looks like everybody's already started something, which is really good. But definitely for those folks who haven't called your USDA or soil and water office, it's always good to just get on their radar, right? And they're all wonderful people to work with. So I definitely would encourage you to give them a call. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, so Lou said some stores, once you register, they're going to keep you on file. Harbor Freight and Amazon keep them on file. Yep. So it makes it really easy, right? You walk in and you feel pretty cool when you're like, oh yeah, I'm tax exempt, and the numbers in the system. So sometimes you do have to like sign for it every time you make a purchase, but it's really convenient. Okay, so we have now completed half of our resetting list. So this is just my, whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, a chicken on a bear, you know? This just made me laugh when I saw it. So that's why it's in here. That's it. It doesn't apply to farm finances. So now, actually, I'm going to save that question. We're going to go ahead and take a 2 or 3 minute break. So go ahead, stand up, stretch. I'm going to go close my eyes and turn off my lights for a second. And we'll come back and we'll keep going through our resetting list. So let's plan to be back here at like 6:42. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera and my mic off. If you guys have any questions you want us to talk about in the chat, go ahead. Otherwise, we will see you back here at 6:42. Okay, so as you're coming back in, I'm going to try to find my poll box that just disappeared and we'll get that put up. Hey Amy, if you're there, does my video still come through okay if I don't have that extra light up top? Okay, thank you. All right, so there we go. This is a very important philosophical question that I have. Is cereal soup? So go ahead and select your opinion as you as you come back in and join us here tonight. Does this have anything to do with farm finances? Absolutely not, but
I mean, in the same vein as a hot dog, a sandwich.
yes, so that I always I transition between a cereal, soup, or a hot dog, a sandwich, right? These are important questions to me. And also I'm so interested to know which leg people put in their pants first, right? I don't know if anybody else is obsessed with this, but when my husband and I first started talking to each other, that was like question number 3 that I asked him, and he doesn't let me forget that that's what I was really concerned about. So all right, so again, as you're coming back into this space, we just want to know, is cereal soup, or is hot dog a sandwich? These are important. Which leg do you put in your pants first? Is it your right leg or your left leg, or do you just use both legs and jump into them at the same time? All right, so it looks like, yep, it looks like we've got most people back. So I'm going to end this and we're going to see what everybody said. Luckily, nobody told me this wasn't a good poll question, which means I'm going to keep using it. So thank you for that. We've got an almost even group, but the majority is that soup is, or oh my goodness, that cereal is not soup. So I don't know, maybe this is a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to have someday, Amy. All right. Thank you all for participating, for coming back to this space. And now I'm going to get our presentation going again. Okay, so we're going to keep going through our resetting for 2023 list. This is the bottom half of the list, and these are some more of the longer things, right? So I think sometimes when there's a lot of things to do, it's important to pick low-hanging fruit so that you can mark some stuff off of your to-do list and keep moving forward. The things at the bottom of your list, however, are things that aren't as quick to, or aren't as easy to mark off. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is revisiting or creating your business plan. So a farm business plan is a document that we use to clarify your goals, your farm budget, and set your priorities for the future. The good news is I have a wonderful presentation about farm business planning that is very fun. As fun as farm business planning can be, but I think it's exceptionally fun. The bad news is it takes 2 hours. So I'm going to give you the 2-minute version of my farm business planning presentation. And you all will receive copies of these slides. If you sign up to receive notification from our team, we do this workshop at least once a year. So it's something that you can catch on the flip side if you're really interested in that. So a business plan can be many different things, but it's usually some type of a strategic plan, a marketing plan, succession plan. It's a roadmap for where your farm business is headed. It can look like a laminated presentation folder that you give to your banker or potential investors. It can look like a Word document or a note that you keep on your phone where you just put down your dreams and your plans for moving forward. And it can look like a back of a napkin, right? So I think I shared on Tuesday that my farm's business plan is a notebook. It's a notebook that sits on the shelf next to our cooking books. And that's not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for? Recipe books. Yeah. And it is a living document, right? So we're always going back to it. We're always adding to it. We're always changing. We're always pivoting. So a business plan doesn't have to be the perfect presentation. And it depends on who it's for, right? So your business plan could be for your banker. Your business plan could be for your spouse when you're trying to convince them that you have the best new idea. But most importantly, a business plan is for yourself as you're making decisions for your farm. Business plans typically consist of these categories: an executive summary, a mission statement, which typically includes your why bother, right? For your whole farm, the values of your operation, the background of the farm, so the nitty gritty stuff about your farm, your organizational structure, so your business structure, key personnel on the farm, and what everybody does. An operations plan where you really kind of lay out the priorities for your farm, how you're going to produce different things, and how you're going to create and maintain sustainable processes. Some type of a marketing plan, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later on. And financial statements. So your income statement, your balance sheet, cash flow projections, budgets, right? Especially for when you're managing different enterprises or encountering a new business opportunity. And then a really nice snappy summary. There we go. That was my 2-hour business planning course in 2 minutes. So again, if you're interested in delving into any more of those topics, please just let us know and we'll let you know when we're planning to do that workshop. The next thing is to revisit or create your marketing plan. So a marketing plan is what answers, in my opinion, the most important question for your farm business, which is what's your market, right? So a marketing plan is going to define the 4 Ps of your farm, which anybody who's taken a intro level marketing class, you've heard of this concept of the 4 Ps before. It defines the price, so how much you're going to sell your product for. It defines what the product is. What are you selling, right? Are you selling just carrots? Or you're selling carrots, peppers, and onions? It's going to define the place. Where are you selling that? Is it a farmer's market directly off the farm, online using some type of aggregator app, to friends and family, right? A CSA. And then promotion. How are you going to tell people what you're selling and tell people your story? So you're going to have a social media campaign, rely on word of mouth, newspaper ads. What's your promotion look like? So a marketing plan will put together these 4 things in a very strategic way. And good news is in, let me just check. In the spring of this year, we are partnering again with FarmOpsP to offer a seminar just like this one, called Minding Your Marketing P's and Q's. And we're going to talk entirely about creating a marketing plan for your farm. So we hope to see you there. But if you want my biggest takeaway for creating a marketing plan for your farm, it's that you shouldn't do anything without knowing who you're going to sell it to, right? So you shouldn't go ahead and buy a herd of some very unique and specific breed of beef cattle unless you know your unique and specific customer that you're selling those cows to. So just in case you didn't hear me the first time I said it, don't do anything without knowing who you're going to sell it to, right? Don't plant anything without knowing who it's going to. Don't purchase a new cute fluffy animal without knowing who it's going to. And then just once again, because it's important, don't do anything without knowing who you're going to sell it to. It's in bold now. And then finally, not only is it bold, but it's also in capital letters. So don't do anything on your farm without knowing who you're going to sell it to. And I mean, that's the gist of creating a marketing plan for your farm. So if you don't already have an existing marketing plan in your farm, it's defining these 4 Ps for your farm, or attend our seminar in the spring when we'll do a deep dive into this. Okay, so the next thing on our resetting list is to take inventory of your supplies and livestock. So maintaining inventory on your farm is important for several reasons. It updates your net worth, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Helps you with supply management, helps you update your insurance coverage, and helps you with feed production planning. So if you're dealing with livestock, maintaining inventory will tell you, you didn't produce enough hay, you didn't buy enough hay, and you can readjust for next year. So to go through and inventory your supplies and livestock, there's advantages of tracking and managing your inventory on your farm, which can include anticipatory and bulk buying for price breaks. So for example, if you don't maintain a proper inventory or keep track of how much supplies you use, fertilizer is a great one, right? So we go out at the beginning of the year, we buy a few bags of fertilizer, we use it, but then throughout the year, we're always going back and buying a few more bags, few more bags, few more bags. However, if we kept good records of our inventory and our supplies, then we would know how many bags of fertilizer we need for a growing season. And for the following year, we could go out and buy fertilizer in bulk to capture price breaks for bulk purchases. So there's an issue with like cash flow management, right? Making sure you have enough cash, but that's not really an issue until you know how much product you actually need and what you need to purchase to get those price breaks. Maintaining a good up-to-date inventory also helps you keep accurate insurance coverage for risk management purposes. So if you have a liability insurance policy on your farm, or if you're insuring animals on your farm, right? Usually once a year, your insurer should be reaching out to you to update your inventory. And you can also use good inventory and production records to apply for risk management programs. So things like crop insurance. If you've got good inventory management, there'll potentially, hopefully, be less supply interruptions, right? So let's say you are going out to vaccinate your animals for the season, and you thought that you had a whole bunch left over from last year, but you didn't listen to your farm business management specialist and go out and inventory it before calving season. So then you open up your fridge to find that there's actually none left. So, your plans for that day are ruined, and you have to instead call your vet to reorder your vaccines for the year. Inventorying your supplies can also help you keep reflective values that keep up with the times. So especially when we're preparing balance sheets, which we'll talk about in a little bit, going through your inventories. So right now, for example, certain types of equipment, their values have nearly tripled this year, right? Fuel, right? So if you purchase bulk fuel, the value of that bulk fuel varies over time. So keeping up-to-date inventories of your supplies and your livestock will help kind of reflect those changes in prices. It's also easier to update your balance sheet, update your income statement with up-to-date inventories. How often you need to track your inventory will depend on your operation. So for example, on our farm, I really only do hard copy inventory updates once a year, right? At the end of the year. I could do it more often, but we've gotten into a flow where that helps me keep track of things. If you are a beginning farm, you might want to do this more often until you figure out, what types of things you want to track and how often you need to track them. For farms that are a little bit more seasonal, so produce-based farms, usually you're doing inventory checks at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. So whatever ends up working for your farm, there's really no set like quarterly, weekly checklist for inventory management. The things that you should track, so like supplies and livestock, the things that we want to be tracking are considered our farm's assets. So these are, sorry, this is a misprint. It should say things that you own with an N, O-W-N, or things that you use. So this could include equipment and assorted implements, livestock and health supplies. I was just talking about the vaccines, for example. For livestock, you typically break it out by species and then by age. So for example, if you have goats, you might say goats, and then you're going to keep track of the number of breeding does you have, keep track of the number of finishing wethers you have, the number of kids you have, the number of breeding bucks. So keeping track of them by age groups. Some other things that you might keep track of are seeds, fertilizer, and lime, feed, forages, and bedding, whatever kind of works for your farm. So now grab a piece of scrap paper if you have one, or the back of any of the pages that we sent you. I'd like for everybody to write down some of the inventory categories that they might need to track for their farm, and go ahead and share them in the chat. So we'll give everybody just like 1 or 2 minutes. This is just for you guys to get started on the process. So I think that sometimes it's easier to do these bigger projects when you've had a chance to get a little tiny bit of it started, right? So go ahead and take a couple of minutes to write down some of the assets on your farm that you would like to track for inventory purchases. Okay, so if everybody could finish writing up the inventory list that you have. We've got some cool questions in the chat. So Lou is asking if someone has a good farm ledger or accounting software, would it not be tracked that way? It's not a silly question at all. So yes, if depending on how you're tracking your farm ledger or your accounting software, you can sometimes keep track of quantity too. So sometimes farm ledgers, you're only keeping track of the price, right? Which isn't always an accurate representation of inventory. If you're using a little bit more of an elaborate ledger setup or accounting software, then yes, you can use that for inventory and supply management as well. Just depends on, your level of record keeping. Some people find intensive inventory management, depending on your farm, a little bit too much, right? So especially with livestock farms, right? It might not make sense for every single week for you to update your animal numbers if it's a seasonal flock or seasonal herd, for example. But if you've got some farm ledger systems, some accounting software systems are designed to keep track of inventory as you go along. Nina says, I'm a vegetable producer, so I maintain a seed inventory. Really helps me to not order things that we don't need. And that being said, I still order things because they're cool. That's fair, right? I've got potato packets or pumpkin packets from about 4 or 5 years ago, just because I thought they were really cool, right? And I keep buying them every year and I don't need them. David says we inventory logs that we have in production for growing mushrooms. Yes, right. Keeping track of how many are out there. So that when it comes time to harvest, you know how many you're looking for, but then you also know what kind of a size harvest you might have at the end of the season. Walter says if you have fruit trees or bushes, you would inventory those. Yes, absolutely. I think also keeping track of the variety is important too, because sometimes that's a little bit harder. You can't just eyeball that. Kathleen says animals, feed, bedding, equipment, seeds, and garden supplies for her farm. Perfect. Amanda says that she's keeping track of maple syrup bottles. Yep, I think that's a good one, right? Because you usually buy maple syrup bottles in bulk, and sometimes those end up in places that you can't remember where you put them. Equipment parts and maintenance supplies, hitch pins. Yes, all the hitch pins, right? They each have their own little tracker on them, so we can figure out who did not put that hitch pin away. That's perfect. All right. So now if we go back to our checklist, the next thing that we're going to take a look at is updating your balance sheet. So for those of you who are new to the farm or new to farm finances, a balance sheet shows the value of your farm at a specific moment in time. Typically, there's something that's requested by your banker or your lender, but they're also a really useful tool at the farm level for monitoring changes to the business. So what we want to know is, have you ever put together a balance sheet for your farm? And or have you ever applied for a loan or a grant or some type of other service program that requires you to have a balance sheet for your farm? Or any other financial document? So something like an income statement, cash flow statement, an elaborate budget. Go ahead and answer that poll. Let us know if you've had to put together a balance sheet before. And I'll tell you while you're answering this, the reason that I'm asking this question is tonight we're not doing a deep dive on how to prepare financial statements, but this is another one that we do regular workshops and trainings on it. So I'm always interested in to see if we should host it again this year or if we take a year off. So hey, it looks like we're going to be hosting it again, Amy. So looks like it's a split. Some people have put them together, most people haven't. And then most people haven't applied for loans or grants that required balance sheets or other financial statements either. So be on the lookout. We will probably be offering those classes this spring, and in the fall, we usually do those. Perfect. Thank you. I'm just gonna check the chat really quick. So David was saying that he would be tracking goats and the quality of their fiber. Perfect. Utilities and hand tools would be added to the list. And then Nina says, do a walkthrough of your orchards or locations of your fruit trees. And in your inventory, you can notice any health changes. It's perfect, right? Inventory is a great way to double check on things, right? Question I would have, can you get a tax deduction for a tree or bush that is destroyed by weather, predation, etc.? I would say double check with your accountant, just definitely because I focus more on like livestock production, but in general, no. So your tax deductions, like for your actual income taxes, they're going to be based on like cash going in and cash going out. Yeah, I talk to your tax preparer. Sometimes where I see this happen is if you're getting taxed on something, like property tax wise, right? And you have a significant change or loss, then that's where that might be adjusted. But I would need to check, or Amy, if you know offhand, if there's damage to trees, how does that work? Can you depreciate?
Yeah, I
Yes,
don't
you can.
know.
Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was gonna say for damage to trees, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't think that I'd have to check on that one, but and the reason that I'd have to check on it is because yes, you can depreciate trees. So anything that you're using for your farm that is like a bigger investment that you're not going to be selling things off of it right away, right? Or if you buy a tractor, you can do something called depreciation. Trees, blueberry bushes, any other type of long-term crop are all things that can be depreciated. So how that works is if you buy $10,000 worth of trees in year one, you don't actually claim all of that $10,000 as an expense. So in year one. So it gets broken out over year one, over year two, over year three, depending on what type of a crop it was, how much your startup cost was, all of these like little factors that your accountant will help you with. So the reason that I can't say for sure if it would be a tax deduction or not, or how that would work on your taxes, is because it actually gets listed as like a depreciated good. So since this is recorded, I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't know the answer to that, and I'm going to look into it now. There's something called the Farmer's Guide to the Farmer's Tax Guide, and it's prepared by the IRS, and it offers advice and guidance on all of these specific things. So I think that's something I'm gonna be looking into, Nina, because now I'm like, how would that work? So thank you for asking about that. Yes, thank you, Amy. That's the IRS publication 225. Us farm business management specialists who have really dull lives and love reading about risk management and taxes. We print this out every year. It's a lot of fun, but it actually has some really, really helpful information in it. Okay, so I do also offer a class on farm financial analysis. Again, it's another really fun class, I promise, but takes 2 hours. We're going to give you a 2-minute overview of it. So good record keeping is the foundation for financial analysis. Financial analysis is when we look at our farm's financial numbers and see if our farm business is doing what it needs to do to meet our goals. We use financial statements to measure net worth, measure farm profitability, understand where our money is going and where it's coming from, and analyze our farm business financially. There's different types of financial statements that we prepare for the farm. One is an income statement, which you might have heard it as the profit and loss statement. So it looks at all of the income for the farm, all of the expenses for the farm, and it tells you whether or not you made a profit. And then there's a balance sheet. Balance sheet is what we're going to focus on tonight, because I think that updating your balance sheet once a year, especially at the beginning of the year, is a really good habit to get into. And then there's a cash flow statement. Cash flow statement looks at cash specifically coming in and cash specifically going out to make sure you can meet your immediate debts and immediate bills and payments. So taking a closer look at a balance sheet looks at your farm assets, which are things that you own, and your farm liabilities, which are things that you owe. If you take your assets and subtract out your liabilities, that's the farm's net worth. So this is the value of the farm at this specific moment in time. So it's what you own minus what you owe, and that equals your net worth. And net worth is also called owner's equity. Again, this is a 2-hour course. I'm giving you the 2-minute highlights of it. So if none of this makes sense, that's absolutely okay. When we put together a farm balance sheet, we're able to look at the farm's liquidity. A liquidity is the ability of a farm to meet its financial obligations as they're due. So one example, don't freak out. I'm not asking you to do this. This is just an example of what good record keeping can do for you, is that you can calculate your farm's current ratio. Your current ratio looks at your total current assets. So things that are really liquid. Liquid means things that you can sell very quickly to have cash on hand, divided by your total current farm liabilities. That gives you your current asset. Again, not anything that I expect you to understand. I'm just trying to look really fancy to motivate you to do your farm finances. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to do the next part. This is a little bit hard to see, but a balance sheet looks at your assets, the things that you owe, and your liabilities, the things that you own and owe. And it this is not, Amy, remind me, don't ever try to explain balance sheets with a headache. It's just not going to go well. That's not going well for me. Okay, so balance sheet divides things into categories called current, intermediate, and long-term. Current means it's something that's due right now or something that you own right now that can turn into cash really quickly. So a current asset, for example, is cash on hand, your checking account balance, anything that you have in storage that you could sell for cash that day. A current liability is, for example, outstanding bills, right? So like an electric bill that you haven't paid, a feed bill that you hadn't paid. And an example of a financial ratio that you could look at with a balance sheet is your current ratio. So it would take all of your current assets, compare them to your current liabilities, and say, okay, if all of your current liabilities were due today, could you cover them? And we want the answer to be yes, right? But if we keep good records and we can put together a balance sheet, it gives us a really good way to be able to look at these financial ratios to measure the health and well-being of our financial health and well-being of our farm. Okay, so if you're interested in learning more about balance sheets in particular, this book, the very thick book that we mailed to you called Starting an Ag Business, if you turn to page 53, there's a very simplified version of what a balance sheet would look like. So if you've never done a balance sheet for your farm, I definitely would encourage you to put one together and think about it in the way that this book thinks about it on page 53. So the other thing is that if financial statements are overwhelming to you, if you just know that this is the first time you're doing one and you want a little bit of support, this is my job, right? So we go out and we help farms prepare balance sheets. The MEs in your counties, in your regions will help you do that. There's really great resources across the state to help you prepare a balance sheet. And the great news is once you put your balance sheet together for the first time, it's a lot easier to update because you've got something to start with. So if you look at page 53, you'll see how it's got 2 columns, assets and liabilities. Again, assets are things that you own. Liabilities are things that you owe. So your assets, it's got things like your checking account, your savings account, cash, vehicles, machinery, equipment, right? So those are the things that we were inventorying. And then land and your house. For liabilities, it'll be things like credit card statements, unpaid bills, just your unpaid monthly bills, depending on your business cycle. Car loans, machinery loans, equipment loans, mortgages, or other long-term loans, right? So this is all that a balance sheet is. It's just looking at your assets, looking at your liabilities, looking to see what you own, looking to see what you owe. We subtract those two together, and what's left over is the net worth of your farm. Okay, that was probably a 2-hour course in 4 minutes, and I apologize for going over on that. All right, these next few ones we're going to go through a little bit more quickly. We want to make sure that at least once a year, we're reviewing these documents that are sometimes a little bit tough to talk about. So your estate plan, your life and disability insurance, and what I call the red binder. So a red binder is something that contains the critical paperwork for your farm and household. So at my house, it includes our life insurance policy, our property insurance policy, our insurance provider contact information. It includes our um, funeral wishes, our succession plan, our will, right? Like it includes all of those like end of life documents or emergency documents. For farms, the other documents that you might want to consider including are your farm banker, right? Your feed mill provider, your vet, a list of farmers that live nearby that could hop on and help if somebody broke their leg and was in the hospital. So red binders are really useful for emergency situations, and they should include the emergency plan for your farm. This is another one of those things that we sometimes do a whole seminar on. So if you're interested in learning more about preparing your red binder, we could talk about that too. But what you should get in the habit of doing is every year updating anything that needs updated, reviewing your emergency plan or your end of life plans with your management team. Speaking of management team, it's also important to use the beginning of the year to meet with your team of advisors. So when I say team of advisors, typically this includes your management team, so the main people on the farm, the day-to-day decision makers of the farm, your key support personnel, and even neighboring advisors. And usually that might be the farmer down the road who has been helping you get started. It might be your extension person down the road who's been working with you, your FarmNet person who's been working with you. Sit down with them and discuss any key updates, any upcoming goals for the year. Do a SWOT analysis, right? Your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and most importantly, eat pizza, right? I'm convinced that pizza makes advisory meetings go as well as they should. So this is an opportunity for you to sit down with your people and say, okay, new year, new us. This is what I'm trying to do. What are you trying to do? And how are we going to meet our goals? At the beginning of the year, you should also be thinking about filing your taxes or planning to file your taxes for the previous year. Talked a little bit about this yesterday, or on Tuesday, but I encourage everybody for if you're thinking or if your goal is to operate your farm as a business, to talk to a in-person accountant, right? So there's some really great electronic tax filing options out there. I think they're wonderful for people who have one W-2 that they're trying to enter. I think they're terrible for people who have businesses that they're trying to keep track of, especially for beginning farmers. So there's things like depreciation. There's questions like what Nina was asking, right? There's a lot of things that come up, and having a real person to talk to can be extremely helpful, particularly if it's somebody who's familiar with filing farm taxes. So the best piece of advice that I have is to talk to the farmer who lives closest to you and ask them who they use for their tax prepare. You'll likely file a Schedule F depending on what type of a business structure you do, or if you decide to file as a hobby, you won't be filing as a Schedule F. Typically, when you're getting started, you've got some equipment purchases or investment purchases that would also be put on a depreciation schedule. This is an example of what a Schedule F looks like. So for a sole proprietor, they would file this version of the Schedule F. You put down your name, your social security number instead of like your EIN number. Principal crop or activity, there's actually codes that you use depending on what your main, what the main thing that you're selling for your farm is. And then there's a lot more, but I'm going to skip over it. We also have a class coming up that's going to be on small farm tax basics. And that should be happening in March. So be on the lookout for that as well. But this is all we're going to talk about. So if you're really interested in taxes, we've got one coming for you. So farm income, looking at all of your sales, usually farms are entering their data on this line 1A. This is everything that you sold for your farm. And then part 2 of the Schedule F is looking at all of your expenses for the farm. So your car and truck expenses, this is that mileage that we were talking about, total feed, fertilizers and lime, taxes, utilities, all of that. So you list down what your total expenses were for the year. So that's it. That's the Schedule F. And this is one of the reasons that I'm a huge proponent of starting out as a sole proprietorship, because I think it makes income tax management a whole lot easier. So you file this attached to your regular 1040 that you would file anyway. And what ends up happening is if the farm has a profit, that gets added to your total adjusted gross income and you're taxed on it. If the farm has a loss, then that also adjusts your gross income. So it's really advantageous for beginning farmers to file as a sole proprietorship using a Schedule F. Okay, so Lou, you'll email all of us for that course. Yes. So actually what I'm going to do, because this course is kind of like our kickoff of what's to come for the rest of the year. We'll be sending out notification for all of our upcoming seminars with FarmOps. And if you're interested, we can send out the seminars that our team does throughout the year and other webinars and workshops as well. Amy, we've got a group of people who are interested in farm finances. So
I am so happy.
this is my dream. This is my
Wonderful. Thank you
Okay.
all.
So now we're going to work on, we have the end in sight, our last few things on our resetting checklist. The next thing that I encourage farms to do is to use this beginning of the year to set your farm's SMART goals. So if you have been through any type of training before, you probably have gone through the SMART goal training. If you haven't, then this is a really useful tool to help organize, just organize ideas and goals that you have for your farm. So SMART goals is an acronym to rethink how we're structuring goals. And all of you have a copy of a little worksheet that you can fill out and follow along to put together some SMART goals for your farm. And it looks like this. That's up on the computer screen right now. And of course I can't find mine. So it'll be white paper with green letters and it says SMART down the left-hand side. So what you do to create a SMART goal is you think of an initial goal that you have, and then to make it a SMART goal, you answer these 5 things. The first one is that you want to make the goal specific. So what do you specifically want to accomplish? You make the goal measurable. How will you quantify your progress or your success? You make it achievable, which is asking yourself, is this goal realistic with the tools that I have on hand and the skills that I have on hand? Is this goal relevant and how does it fit into my why bother and my farm's overall mission? And you make the goal time bound. So you give yourself specific deadlines and dates. So here's a very simplified example. Let's say I have the goal of selling more beef. That's a great goal, right? But how helpful is that goal, really? I think that's always my goal, right? So in order to make that goal a SMART goal, I'm going to say, okay, I want to increase my beef sales by 1 additional steer. So I want to sell 1 additional steer this year. How does that goal how do I measure that goal? Well, I currently sell 4, so now I want to sell 5 this year. Is it achievable? Yes. I checked my records. I've got 5 cows that are freshening this year, so I can sell 5 steers. This is an oversimplified example of a goal, just to show you what it looks like. Is this relevant to my farm's overall goals? Yes, because I want to continue to grow my farm business. The T of SMART goals, how to make it time bound. Okay, I want to have this goal completed by the end of 2024. So I know these cows are going to freshen this year. So next year I'd be selling all those steers. So by the end of 2024, I will have sold 5 steers to continue to increase my farm business sales. So this, again, is an extremely oversimplified example of a SMART goal. But what I'd like for you all to do is go to this sheet that's in your packets and looking at the time. So let's spend 2 minutes. Everybody think of a goal that you have for your farm this year. It can be related to your farm finances, right? So I want to Start doing my records once a week instead of once a year. It could be related to your production. So I want to, double the amount of chickens that I'm raising this year. Or it could be related to kind of efficiency. I want to make sure I get my seed order in sooner rather than later, right? So go ahead, spend 2 minutes, think about a goal that you have on your farm, and start this worksheet. If you finish it, great. If you don't, that's okay too. And if anybody wants to share their goal in the chat, you can do that too. So 2 minutes, work on filling out your SMART goal sheet for your farm. Okay, I think I'm cutting everybody a little bit short on your 2 minutes, but imagine I've got my dinner bell or my gong to bring us all back into this space. Amanda is being extra brave and helpful tonight, and she's sharing her example of her farm goal. So her goal is to sell more syrup, sold around 4 gallons last year, and would like to market and sell 10 this year. That's great, right? So rather than just saying, hey, my goal is to sell more syrup, she's providing numbers and time for her to do this. She's made sure that it's achievable for her farm, and she's made sure that it fits her farm's mission. Perfect, Amanda. Lou shared his goal. Let me, Lou, if you want to go ahead, sorry, if you want to go ahead and copy and paste that and click share to everybody, you can do that, and then folks can read that as they're going along. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay. So we're going to keep going down our resetting for 2023 worksheet. The next thing is to clarify your record keeping system, and good news is you all have already done this. So check mark that, right? This is your who, what, where, when, why, and how of record keeping, your homework. Then we've got creating your chart of accounts and determining what categories you're tracking. This is also on your homework. But in whatever record keeping system you decided to use or to revisit, whatever you're currently using, make sure that the categories you're tracking are working for you. So for example, if you're tracking, I'm trying to think of a good example here, and now nothing's coming to mind, but if you're tracking feed, for example, feed purchases by every single type of feed, right? Then it doesn't, and you're finding that you're not using that information for anything, then that might be a category of expenses that you're tracking that you might kind of merge and just say feed category all as one. If you're tracking all of your animal purchases just as one category, so just animal purchases, but you really want to start to see how much you're actually spending on chick purchases, how much you're actually spending on feeder pig purchases, then you might want to start separating out those two categories. Okay, Lou, I'm going to copy and paste what Lou wrote in the chat. And then Nina says, we use the categories on Schedule F as our categories. It helps our accountant to fill out the document at text time. Absolutely. I think that's a great starting place. And I think that that's a way to make sure that your categories are going to match what you need at text time. What some people find is there's some extra categories on the Schedule F, right? Like, so don't track those. Don't include those on your ledger system. If you find that the feed category is too broad and you want to start tracking out chicken feed and goat feed, then you can start separating those out. So next, almost to the end of our checklist here, is deciding how you're going to celebrate the small wins. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge that farming is really hard, right? Paperwork is really hard. Caring for animals is really hard. Dealing with the weather is really hard. And sometimes life is just generally really hard, right? Sometimes we're here trying to give a seminar presentation on a topic that we love with a raging migraine and a whole bunch of fluorescent lights. Sometimes life just sucks and it's really hard. But I think that it's absolutely and positively absurd that we get to have the opportunity, the privilege to be outside in nature, outside in the world around us, away from screens, right? Away from the city lights and bustling activity. And we get the chance to grow food for our families, food for our friends, food for our community. And I think even if you're, sometimes we cliche the farm as being in the middle of nowhere. Even on an urban farm, how absurdly positive is it that you get to grow food, right? Even in aquaponics situation where you're not outside, how amazing is it that you get to make something? And I think it can be so easy to get caught up in this sucks stage of life, right? Like, this is dumb, this is hard, that it's really important to make sure we take a moment to say, this is so cool, this is so amazing. And to do that, I think that it's important to celebrate the small wins, right? So, hey, did you remember to put your receipt in your designated receipt spot? Like, that's awesome. I have a farm that I work with, and not to be like gender roles, right? But the wife was in charge of the books and the husband was the one making the purchases. And she was getting so frustrated with him because he wasn't bringing the receipts and putting them on their table. So what she ended up doing was putting a little candy dish next to where she wanted him to put the receipts. And she told him, every time you put a receipt here, you get a piece of candy, right? And like, oh my gosh, what a simple way to celebrate the small wins, but it worked, right? So if you do something, if you meet one of your SMART goals, right? If you check off one of these things on your resetting list, celebrate that small win and make a plan for how you're going to celebrate that small win. Genius. Yes, Amanda, when I went to that farm, I was like, this goes in the Hall of Fame of positive motivation for record keeping. I absolutely loved it. Gina, I'm gonna come right back to your question in just a second. So please don't think that I'm ignoring it. Oops. I have no idea what I just did. But that's okay. We're gonna figure it out. We are almost to the end. Okay. Nope, that's not working either. That's okay. We are going to, you guys are going to see a little bit of a different version of this, just in the spirit of time. Okay. So the last thing that I want you to think about on your checklist is to build in time for rest and reflection. So this is something, I'll admit that I do too. Farmers are terrible at building in rest, right? When we have to rest, it's usually because there's a significant health concern, right? When we have to rest, it's because it's been raining and we're super frustrated that we can't get out and do anything. And I'll share a little bit of a quick kind of personal story for all of you, which will explain my raging migraine that I have tonight. This fall, I was out working cows with my husband and we were tagging cows and one happened to catch me in just the right way. She headbanged me right after I had tagged her. And I ended up getting a severe concussion. I was out of work for a month. I couldn't play with my kids for a month. I couldn't go outside and do barn chores for a month. And I'm still dealing with issues from that 3 months later. And what it really showed me while I was laid up, right? And I got this chance to kind of rest I got a chance to nap. I got a chance to think and let my brain kind of get away from that like day-to-day task. Got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And since then, I've been really conscious of building in rest, right? So if there's tasks that are on the top of my list, but maybe they don't absolutely have to get done, and I have a moment to go take a nap instead, I have a moment to take a walk with my husband, take a walk with my kids instead, right? Is anybody really going to know that I didn't trim that goat's hooves today and I pushed it off until tomorrow? Probably not. So I've been working with more and more farms on scheduling rest, right? Acknowledging the importance of rest for ourselves and acknowledging that it's important enough to put on our to-do list. So schedule rest before you're forced to rest is kind of the bold line of that story. So here's some ideas. Most of these are from other farms that I've worked with. So as you're planning out your farm, particularly if you have a livestock-based farm where you do have things that have to get done every day, right? Like you have to water and feed your animals every day. You just have to do that. Think about ahead of time if there's a way that you can hire help or ask a friend to help do chores once a day, once a month, or not once a day, once a month, right? Once a month, can you have somebody come and help do chores for one day so that you can go to the zoo with your family, so that you can shut your door and take an extended nap, so that you can catch up on a TV show, right? Is there something that you can do so that you can build in time away from the farm, build in time for rest? Question the return on things that take up your time, especially before you say yes to more, right? So farmers are dreamers, and we will have lists of all of the things that we want to do that are never ending, okay? And we might put together a budget and we might say, wow, look at the profit margin on this, right? How many times have any of you ever included your time as an expense when you're planning out these dreams? Exactly, right? We never pay ourselves. We never value our time. So instead of automatically saying yes to the next big thing, I think it's really important to measure the return on our time. So before we say yes to another farmer's market, before we say yes to another variety of vegetables, before we say yes to bringing home some more goats, right? It's not just about the money, it's also about our time. And all of the time that we put into our farm is less time that we can put into rest and less time that we can put into reflection. So I would encourage everybody to schedule time to take a nap, schedule time to take a shower, schedule time to take a walk, schedule time to eat a dang cookie, right? And this might seem like a really elementary conversation, and it's probably a little bit absurd that I'm here in this public platform preaching to everybody, like, take a nap, eat a cookie. But I have worked with so many farms and myself too that have just gotten so burnt out because we don't plan for rest. So, moral of the story, decide now how you're going to rest during the busiest times of this year, right? You know it's going to be busy at planting season. How are you going to rest? You know it's going to be busy during calving season. How are you going to rest? Perfect. Thank you, Nina. It's not elementary. This is an issue among farmers. Appreciate that. Okay. That being said, we have finished our checklist. And that's a wrap. So I did have a really nice conclusion slide, but I think in this version it doesn't come through. Okay, so never mind. You don't get a conclusion slide. You get this slide of my kids. This is my why bother, right? This is why I do what I do. And this is why we bother to farm, because these guys are cute. So that being said, let me go ahead and I'm going to pull back up. I'm going to stop this. And we're going to go over a couple of conclusionary things that didn't make it on my slide. Then we'll pop back over to the chat. And then we will wrap up for the night. So as we're going through some last minute things, if you have any questions, please go ahead and start typing those in and we'll kind of go through them down the line. At the end of tonight's seminar, there will be an evaluation that pops up automatically, and I'll also include it in the follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow. Please fill that out. There will be an option that you can sign up to receive our newsletter, which will contain upcoming event notifications. And also, if you aren't already on NINA's FarmOps notification list, you can go to their website to get signed up too. So we plan on doing several more seminars throughout the rest of the year. I'm looking at the list right now. So we're going to be doing small farm tax basics, protecting against Murphy's Law, so kind of risk management, and when things go wrong, what do you do? Backyard beef, minding your marketing P's and Q's, raising poultry for meat production, and farm diversification. So we've got lots of workshops coming up, and we also have room to schedule more. So if you're interested in attending any of those, just make sure you're on NINA or ours notification list and you'll get that. Additionally, our program, we do workshops for the public, and those usually for me tend to be around business planning, marketing plans, all of those. Amy does livestock oriented workshops, so goat production, sheep production. We're really excited. We're going to be hosting an alpaca day this year, right? So that's at the top of our list. So we've got lots of things coming up. As a conclusion for the content of this, everything that was mailed out to you is yours to keep. We would like for you to put that, remember, please don't forget your farm finances are worthy of attention. Put that sticker someplace. I think I probably should have made a company sticker that says, please don't forget that rest is worthy of your attention, right? There is the business planning packet from Cornell FarmNet, New York FarmNet that you can go through. This will have more information about balance sheet, business planning, all of that. We've got copies of the mileage log. You've got copies of the ST-125s to put into your vehicles as you're driving around. And we will also be sharing this recording and a copy of the slides with all of you via email. Okay, Amy, was that my list? Am I forgetting anything?
I think you got it all.
Okay, perfect. So at this point, we would invite you, you all had Post-it notes from the end of the class on Tuesday, where we asked you to write down any questions that you wanted to have answered tonight. So if you didn't get that question answered, feel free to type that in the chat box. Additionally, if you have anything else, go ahead and type that in the chat box too.
Caitlin, do we want to stop the recording for this?
Yes, we do. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop that.